'70s, Terence McKenna and his brother Dennis McKenna were the first that proposed the stoned ape hypothesis. It is known now that 22 primates, 23 including us, consume mushrooms. And the idea was our ancestors, they came out of the trees and went across the savannah, would be tracking animals that were pooping. Well, in the subtropics, the most common mushroom coming out of those cow patties is Psilocybe cubensis, a potent magic mushroom.
One thing that mushrooms and other psychedelics do reliably is they induce synesthesia. Synesthesia is the perception of one sensory modality in another. Hearing colors, for example, or seeing music. You have these profound experiences, and you have to put yourself in their place and imagine what the impact of such an experience must have been on an early hominid.
These magic mushrooms open up the floodgates of information you receive. Basically, you can think of it as a contact fluid between the synapses within the brain. Wow, what a competitive advantage, especially if you're working with the geometry of weapons or having to put together something that will give you a better chance of survival. The fact that this happened not once, not twice, but millions upon millions of times over millions of years is a very plausible explanation for the tripling of the brain 2 million years ago.
It's not so simple to say that they ate psilocybin mushrooms and suddenly the brain mutated. I think it's more complex than that, but I think it was a factor. It was like a software to program this neurologically modern hardware to think, to have cognition, to have language. Because language is essentially synesthesia. Language is an association with inherently meaningless sound, except that it's associated with a complex of meaning. A great deal of the brain's real estate, you might say, is devoted to the generation and/or the comprehension of language. Those neural structures are not found in our ancestors. That's a human trait, to have so much physiology devoted to generating and understanding language. And that's a reflection of evolutionary events that made us what we are.
I couldn't get these mushrooms for the longest time. When I was in Ohio, I actually purchased a bag of magic mushrooms. But I had no guide. I had no recommendations for how much to consume. So I had a bag about this big, so I thought, well, that's probably one dose. So I consumed the bag. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is like 10 times more than you probably need to consume. It was a warm summer day, and there was a beautiful big tree, an oak tree. And then I noticed the black clouds on the horizon, and I realized there was a storm coming. And I thought, this is great. I have this great visual of the storm coming. And I thought, well, I'm gonna climb to the top of the tree. So I'm starting to feel the effects. I'm getting waves where the air becomes a liquid, and you have this distortion field go through the visual landscape. I've never seen that before. I'm going, oh, wow, this is what they were talking about. And I see the boiling clouds are coming closer, but they're looking angry now. And then the lightning strikes would go, and then all these geometrical fractals would emanate out of the lightning strikes. And pretty soon I had these overlying mosaics of mathematical patterns and geometric figures of multiple colors that were swimming in this field of vision that these waves were flying through. I've never in my life seen anything like that before. Winds increasing, then the rains would come, and I became extremely scared. And then also I realized I'm on the top of a hill, we've got lightning storm in the tallest tree. Not the best place to be when you're gonna choose a spiritual experience. And so I held onto the tree for dear life. And that tree was my pillar back into the core of the earth. And I felt secure as long as I held onto the tree. Lightning strikes all around, thunderclaps. 1 second between a lightning strike and a thunderclap, you knew it was coming closer and closer. I was terrified that I wouldn't survive. And through this terrific experience, terrifying and terrific at the same time, I'm up in this tree and I'm saying, well, what should I focus on? And I said, well, Stamets, you're not stupid, but you stutter all the time. And so I thought, I need to stop stuttering. And so I said to myself, stop stuttering. Stop stuttering now. A little inner voice in my head. You hear me? Stop stuttering now. And then I started saying that, stop stuttering now, hundreds, thousands of times. After the storm had passed, I came down from the tree, drenched, soaked to the bone, in love with life, with nature, in love with that tree. That tree was so important to me. And I went home and I went to bed. I didn't see anybody. And the next morning I woke up and there was a really attractive lady that I liked a lot. But I could never stare at her in the eyes because I was afraid to stutter and embarrass myself. So better to avoid social contact than have social contact, even though I was really attracted to her. And she liked me, but I didn't know what to do with it, with that attention. And so she was walking past me and she looked at me and she said, "Good morning, Paul." And for the first time, I looked her straight in the eye and I said, "Good morning, how are you?" And I stopped stuttering in one session.
Fruiting bodies of fungi. So the mushroom is like the apple. The bulk of the organism is growing underground, and it's composed of these long threads. And these threads grow one cell at a time, and then they branch and rebranch, growing in every direction they can, even three-dimensionally. And that mass of threads is called a mycelium.
A stick falls onto the ground, I pull it up, and there's mycelium. It is virtually everywhere.
A mycelium has more networks than our brain has neural pathways, and works in much the same way with electrolytes, electrical pulses. They're the most common species on Earth. They're everywhere.
Just to give you an idea of how much fungi are in the forest, as you're walking, there's about 300 miles of fungi under every footstep that you take, and that's all over the world. And they form these massive links. It's like a big web, just growing through the forest.
Mycelium that can grow out even just this big can have trillions, literally trillions of end branchings. Almost everyone knows about the computer internet. The mycelium shares the same network design.
Trees are communicating using the mycelium as pathways. They're connecting one tree to another. They're using the mycelium too to feed one another. In other words, one tree can swap nutrients with another tree using mycelium as the passageway.
So we often think of kin recognition as an animal behavior. Humans, we love our babies. We know it's our baby and we're going to look after that baby. Well, we never thought that plants could do that, but we're finding in our research that plants can recognize their own kin. So these mother trees recognize their kin through their mycorrhizal networks. The mother tree and the baby seedlings are sending signals, talking to each other. When they're connected together and carbon is moving between plants, the trees are supporting the weaker ones. If she knows that there's pests around and that she's under danger, she will increase her competitive environment towards her own babies so that they regenerate further away. It's a magical thing. And this could not happen without the fungi.